The iPad flared to life in the shadowed Seattle kitchen, a single notification slicing through the silence like a blade. It wasn't David's device, but the message burned into his retinas. She thinks you're at the office. Want to see what we're up to? David Clark, 38, froze mid-sip, his coffee turning bitter as the truth spilled across the screen. Rain tapped the windows of his Madison Park home, a steady rhythm that matched the pulse in his temples. The kitchen, with its slate-gray cabinets and copper kettle, had always been his sanctuary, a place for early mornings and quiet routines. Now it felt like a crime scene. The iPad, left carelessly on the counter by his wife, Kate, buzzed again, as if daring him to look closer. He didn't want to, not yet, but habit, that cruel autopilot, made his eyes drift to the preview. A photo. Kate, laughing, her hair a cascade of auburn against a hotel room's crisp white sheets. Beside her, a man with tattooed biceps and a smirk that screamed arrogance. Tyler Reed, her personal trainer, the one she'd called her balance guru, with a giggle that used to charm David but now felt like a lie. He set the mug down, the ceramic clinking softly against the marble island. No outburst, no shattered glass, just a stillness so heavy it seemed to mute the rain. David's mind churned, piecing together the clues he'd ignored for months. Kate's late-night yoga classes, the new perfume that clung to her like a stranger's touch, the way she'd started locking her phone with a passcode she never shared. He'd trusted her, loved her, built a life with her, brick by brick, mortgage payment by payment. And now this, their golden retriever, Lucky, padded in from the living room, his nails clicking on the hardwood. Sensing the shift in the air, he nudged David's knee with a wet nose, brown eyes wide with concern. "It's okay, buddy," David whispered, though the words tasted hollow. He scratched Lucky's ear, grounding himself in the dog's warmth as his gaze returned to the iPad. The screen had dimmed, but the message lingered like a ghost. Tyler Fit. Want to see what we're up to? The attached photo's thumbnail was small, but it showed enough. Kate's arm draped over Tyler's chest, her smile brighter than it had been in years. David's fingers hovered over the screen. A part of him, the part that still remembered their wedding vows, her laughter on their honeymoon in Napa, wanted to believe it was a mistake. A prank. Anything but betrayal. But hope, he realized, was a brutal liar. He tapped the message, and the full image loaded. Kate in a dimly lit hotel room, her eyes sparkling with mischief, Tyler's hand resting possessively on her hip. The timestamp read 11:14 p.m. When Kate had texted David she was staying late at the studio for meditation. Meditation. The word twisted in his gut like a knife. He didn't scream, didn't hurl the iPad against the wall. Instead, he reached for his phone with the calm of a man defusing a bomb. He snapped 3 photos of the iPad screen, timestamp, contact name, photo all preserved. Then, he forwarded the entire thread to his personal email, labeling it Exhibit A. Kate was sloppy, leaving her device unlocked, her secrets exposed. She didn't respect him enough to hide her tracks. That hurt more than the affair itself. David sat at the kitchen table, pushing aside a stack of unopened bills. The rain grew heavier, drumming the roof like a warning. Lucky curled up at his feet, a loyal anchor in a world that had just capsized. David pulled a notepad from the drawer, the kind he used for client portfolios, and began to write. 2 lists. What I still care about and what I'm ready to let burn. The first list was short. Lucky, the house, his peace. The second was shorter, Kate. Not because he hated her, not yet, but because she'd already written herself out of his story. He leaned back, the chair creaking under his weight. The coffee was cold now, but he didn't care. His mind was sharp, cutting through the fog of betrayal to a single, crystalline truth. Kate wasn't just cheating. She was underestimating him. She thought he'd sulk, maybe beg, maybe forgive her like he'd overlooked her smaller lies before. But David wasn't that man anymore. The man she married might have swallowed the pain. The man sitting here, pen in hand, was something else entirely. He glanced at Lucky, who lifted his head as if to say, "What's next?" David's lips twitched, not quite a smile. "We're done playing her game, bud," he said softly. He tore the page from the notepad, folded it, and tucked it into his pocket. The iPad buzzed again. Another message from Tyler, no doubt. David didn't look. He didn't need to. The evidence was enough, and the plan was already forming. Kate had stretched their marriage to the breaking point, but David wasn't the one who'd snap. Not tonight. Not ever. He stood, grabbed his keys, and whistled low. Lucky bounded to his side, tail wagging despite the tension. The leash clicked into place, and David opened the back door, letting the cool Seattle air wash over him. The rain was relentless, but it didn't matter. He and Lucky stepped into the night, leaving the iPad behind, its screen glowing faintly in the empty kitchen. Somewhere across town, Kate was tangled in her lies, thinking she'd outsmarted him. Let her think it. Let her laugh. Because David was already rewriting the ending, and this time he'd be the one walking away. The Seattle dawn broke gray and heavy, rain streaking the windows like tears the city couldn't hold back. David Clark hadn't slept, but his eyes were sharp, cutting through the haze of betrayal with a precision that felt almost surgical. By 6 a.m., he was at the kitchen table, a fresh pot of coffee his only companion, mapping out a plan to reclaim his life from the wreckage Kate had left behind. Lucky, his golden retriever, sprawled at his feet, snoring softly, oblivious to the storm brewing in David's mind. The iPad sat untouched on the counter, its screen dark but still radiating the weight of last night's discovery. Kate's affair with Tyler Reed, her trainer, captured in a careless photo and a smug message. David didn't need to look again. The image was seared into him. Kate's laugh, Tyler's possessive grin. It wasn't just infidelity. It was disrespect, sloppy and brazen, as if David's trust was a trivial thing to toss aside. He opened his laptop, fingers moving with purpose. First, evidence. He logged into their shared cloud account, where Kate's phone backed up automatically. She hadn't changed the password. Another oversight in her arrogance. There they were. Texts, photos, even location pings from her yoga sessions that placed her at a boutique hotel in Belltown. Not the studio she claimed. He screenshot everything. Flirty exchanges, hotel receipts charged to their joint card, a selfie of Kate and Tyler at a rooftop bar, her lips brushing his cheek. Each click was a nail in the coffin of their marriage, and David drove them in methodically. Next, the house. David had always been cautious, a trait honed by years as a financial analyst. 18 months ago, when Kate's late nights started smelling of unfamiliar perfume, he'd quietly moved their Madison Park home into a trust under his name alone. He'd told her it was for tax efficiency, and she'd signed the papers without a glance, too busy texting under the table. Now he pulled up the trust documents, confirming every clause was ironclad. The house, his sanctuary, paid for with his sweat and discipline, was untouchable. Kate wouldn't get a brick. Lucky stirred, lifting his head as if sensing the shift in David's resolve. "You're next, buddy," David said, ruffling the dog's ears. He grabbed his keys and loaded Lucky into the car, the rain-soaked streets of Seattle blurring past as they headed to the vet. The clinic smelled of antiseptic and wet fur, but the staff knew Lucky well. David filled out forms to microchip him, registering the dog solely in his name. "No one's taking you," he told Lucky, who wagged his tail, oblivious but trusting. The vet handed over a small tag, its etched numbers a promise. Lucky was his, legally and forever. Back home, David tackled the finances. He logged into their banking portal, his fingers dancing across the keyboard with the calm of a man dismantling a bomb. Kate loved her shiny metal credit cards, Visa, MasterCard, the Amazon store card she used for overpriced candles and gym gear. One by one, he froze them, setting alerts for any attempted transactions. The joint checking account was trickier. He transferred most of the balance to his personal account, leaving just enough to avoid suspicion. Kate wouldn't notice until she tried to buy her next oat milk latte and saw declined flash across the screen. He paused, staring at the laptop. A memory flickered. Kate, 2 years ago, curled up on the couch, promising she'd always be his safe place. The lie stung, but it also clarified something. She wasn't his safe place anymore. He was. David opened a new email to his attorney, Sarah Gwynn, a woman with a reputation for turning divorces into clean executions. Subject: Initiate Phase 1. He attached the screenshots, the trust documents, and a brief note. No calls. Just start the paperwork. Adultery and financial misconduct. Sarah would know what to do. The rain eased to a drizzle, casting a soft glow through the kitchen windows. David stood, stretching, and glanced at the iPad. It buzzed again, Tyler probably with another careless taunt. David ignored it. He didn't need more proof. He had enough to bury them both. Instead, he grabbed a pen and a grocery receipt from the counter, flipping it over to jot down his priorities. Protect Lucky. Secure the house. Cut the money. Stay calm. The last one was underlined twice. Emotion had no place in this. Not yet. He thought about confronting Kate, imagining her walking through the door, her yoga bag slung over her shoulder, that fake smile she'd perfected. Would she cry? Lie? Beg? The thought almost made him laugh. Not from joy, but from the absurdity of it. She'd underestimated him, assumed he'd roll over like he had during her smaller betrayals. The forgotten anniversaries, the work trips that smelled of cologne. But this wasn't a forgotten date. This was a declaration of war, and David was already arming himself. He walked to the kitchen island, where Kate's lavender candle still sat, its sugary scent cloying. He blew it out, the wick hissing in protest. Then he wrote a note on a slip of paper. Don't forget who walks lucky. No signature, no venom, just a quiet jab that would hit harder than any shouting match. He left it on the island, next to Lucky's leash and water bowl, a subtle signal that he was done playing her game. Lucky whined, nudging David's leg, ready for their morning walk despite the drizzle. David clipped on the leash, his movements deliberate. Let's go, bud, he said, opening the back door. The air was cool, heavy with the scent of wet pine. As they stepped onto the porch, David's phone pinged. An email from Sarah. Got it. Drafting now. You're covered. He nodded to himself, pocketing the phone. The plan was in motion, and Kate didn't even know the ground was shifting beneath her. Somewhere across town, she was probably still with Tyler, lost in her fantasy of freedom. Let her stay there. Let her think she'd won. Because David was building something stronger than her lies. A future where he answered to no one but himself. And as he and Lucky walked into the misty Seattle morning, the rain washing away the last traces of doubt, David felt it. Not anger, not pain, but purpose. Kate had stretched their marriage to its limit. Now it was his turn to pull the thread and watch it unravel. The Seattle sky hung low, a quilt of clouds stitching shut any hope of sunlight. David Clark stood on his porch, Lucky's leash slack in his hand, watching the drizzle polish the world to a dull sheen. Inside, the note he'd left for Kate. Don't forget who walks lucky. Sat on the kitchen island, a quiet grenade waiting to detonate her illusions. David hadn't seen Kate since the iPad lit up his world with her betrayal 2 days ago. She'd texted once, a breezy staying late at yoga, don't wait up, as if her affair with Tyler Reed was just another errand. David didn't reply. He was too busy fortifying his life against the storm she didn't know was coming. But today, a new piece of the puzzle clicked into place. One that made his plan not just defensive but devastating. He sat at his home office desk, the room a fortress of order. Files stacked neatly, a single cactus on the windowsill, the hum of his laptop the only sound. Lucky dozed in a patch of gray light by the door, his tail twitching like a metronome. David opened his email, where a message from his attorney, Sarah Gwynn, waited. Found something interesting in Kate's business filings. Call me. His pulse quickened, but his face stayed stone. He dialed Sarah, speaker on, and her voice cut through the quiet like a scalpel. Kate's been busy, Sarah said, no preamble. She revived her old LLC Soul Bloom, the candle and bracelet thing. Added Tyler as co-owner last month. They filed for a $50,000 business loan, approved last week. Guess what they listed as collateral? David leaned forward. The house. Anticipated equity in your house, Sarah corrected, her tone sharp with amusement. Not legally binding, just implied. She told the loan officer it was a joint asset. Didn't mention the trust. Sloppy, but bold. David's lips twitched. Not a smile but a flicker of irony. Kate thought she could leverage his home, the one he'd shielded in a trust, to fund her fantasy with Tyler. What else? He asked. They're already behind on the first payment, Sarah said. And here's the kicker. You're not on the LLC anymore. You transferred it to Kate's name 2 years ago for her female founder grants. She forgot. Tyler's name is on it now, so they're both liable for the debt. Not you. David exhaled, the sound almost a laugh. 2 years ago, he'd handed Kate the LLC like a gift, thinking it would fuel her dreams. She'd called it romantic, then let it gather dust until she saw a chance to play empire builder with her trainer. Now, that forgotten paperwork was a trap she'd sprung on herself. Can we use this? He asked. Already drafting, Sarah replied. The loan, the LLC, her using your house as collateral without consent. It's financial misconduct. Combined with the adultery evidence, it's a slam dunk. She won't get a dime in spousal support, and Tyler's on the hook for the debt too. David nodded, though Sarah couldn't see it. Keep it quiet until we're ready to serve. You got it, she said. This is cleaner than most cases I've seen. She handed you the rope. He ended the call and leaned back, staring at the ceiling. Kate and Tyler weren't just lovers. They were business partners now, tethered by a $50,000 noose they didn't even feel tightening. The audacity of it, using his house, his stability to bankroll their delusion, lit a spark of anger in his chest. But David didn't let it flare. Anger was messy. He needed precision. He pulled up Kate's iCloud again, digging deeper. A voice memo, synced from her phone, caught his eye. Sent to her friend Tara 3 days ago. It was Kate's voice, smug and light. Tyler says we're building an empire. Soul Bloom's gonna be huge. If David finds out, he'll get over it. He always does. David played it twice, each word a confirmation of her betrayal. She didn't just cheat. She dismissed him. Assumed he'd swallow this like he'd swallowed her excuses before. He saved the file, labeled it Exhibit B, and emailed it to Sarah. The rain picked up, hammering the roof like applause. David stood and paced, Lucky lifting his head to track him. The LLC was the twist he hadn't expected. A gift from Kate's own recklessness. She'd roped Tyler into her scheme, thinking it made them a power couple. Instead, she'd chained them to a sinking ship. David, meanwhile, was already on shore, his house safe, his dog loyal, his finances locked down. He checked his phone. A bank alert. Kate had tried to use the frozen visa at a juice bar downtown. Transaction declined. He pictured her, standing at the counter, brow furrowed, tapping the card again as if it were a glitch. The image didn't bring joy, just a cold satisfaction. She'd learned soon enough that her safety net was gone. David sat again, opening a new document on his laptop. He typed, next steps. First, confirm the LLC's status with the state. Sarah was on it, but David cross-checked the public filings himself. Soul Bloom LLC, registered to Kate Evans and Tyler Reed, with a business address tied to their home mailbox. Perfect. Any legal notices would land right where Kate could trip over them. Second, prepare for her return. She'd come home eventually, maybe tonight, maybe tomorrow, with her yoga bag and her lies. David wouldn't confront her, not yet. He'd let her walk into the trap he was building, one piece at a time. Lucky whined, nudging David's leg. "All right, bud," David said, grabbing the leash. The drizzle had softened, leaving the air crisp and clean. They stepped outside, the neighborhood quiet except for the drip of water from cedar trees. David's phone buzzed as they walked. A text from Kate. "Home late again. Studio stuff. Love you." The words were hollow, a reflex she didn't mean. He didn't respond. Instead, he tightened his grip on the leash and kept walking, Lucky trotting beside him, oblivious to the weight of the moment. Kate thought she was clever, weaving her lies while David played the oblivious husband. She didn't know he'd already unraveled her story, thread by thread. She didn't know about the trust, the frozen cards, or the LLC that would bury her and Tyler in debt. Let her dream of empires. Let her laugh with her lover. Because David was rewriting the rules, and when the game ended, he'd be the one standing, with Lucky at his side and his life intact. The rain might fall, but David was done drowning. The Seattle air crackled with the promise of a storm, clouds churning like a warning Kate would never see. David Clark sat in his truck, parked a block from Tyler's Belltown apartment, watching rain bead on the windshield as the clock ticked toward noon. Today, the trap he'd built would spring shut, and Kate, his wife, his betrayer, would learn the cost of her lies. 3 days had passed since the iPad exposed her affair with Tyler Reed, her smug trainer. David hadn't confronted her, hadn't raised his voice. Instead, he'd woven a net of legal and financial moves. The house secured in a trust, Lucky's ownership locked in his name, their joint accounts frozen, and a bombshell discovery: Kate and Tyler's reckless $50,000 loan tied to their Soul Bloom LLC, a debt they'd anchored to a house they couldn't touch. David's attorney, Sarah Gwynn, had called it a masterpiece of self-destruction. Now it was time to deliver the verdict. He glanced at his phone. A text from Jack, the process server, a former Marine with a knack for making bad news feel like fate. At the door. "Ready for the drop." David typed back, "Make it clean." Subtle flare. Jack's reply was a single emoji. A fist. David leaned back, the leather seat creaking. Lucky, curled up in the passenger seat, lifted his head, sensing the tension. "Almost done, bud," David murmured, scratching the dog's ear. The rain drummed harder, a fitting soundtrack for what was coming. Inside Tyler's apartment, Kate lounged on a thrift store couch, wearing Tyler's oversized hoodie, scrolling through Instagram for boho office vibes. Tyler, shirtless as always, sipped a protein shake, oblivious to the knock that would unravel their world. 3 sharp raps cut through the hum of their delusion. "You order something?" Kate asked, not looking up. Tyler shrugged, annoyed. "Nah." Another knock, firmer. A voice followed. "Delivery for Kate Evans and Tyler Reed. Sign here." Tyler opened the door, his swagger fading at the sight of Jack. Blazer crisp, smile disarming, holding an envelope like it was a birthday card. "You Tyler?" Jack asked, voice smooth as glass. "Yeah, that's us," Tyler said, glancing at Kate, who patted over, barefoot and curious. Jack handed over the envelope, tapping his tablet. "Confirm receipt, please." Tyler tore it open, expecting a package slip. Instead, he found a stack of legal documents, the top page bolded. Summons for divorce, adultery, and financial misconduct. Kate leaned in, her breath catching. "What the hell is this?" she whispered, snatching the papers. Her eyes scanned the words. Dissolution of marriage, $50,000 loan liability, Soul Bloom LLC default notice. Tyler flipped to the next page, his face paling at his name in bold. Secondary responsible party. "This says I owe 50 grand, he snapped, turning to Kate. You said the loan was covered. Jack, ever polite, chimed in. Looks like shared liability, sir. Common for business partners. You signed the LLC amendment, right? Kate's voice rose shrill. You told me it was just for funding. Tyler rounded on her. And you said your husband wouldn't do shit. You said he'd roll over. Kate clutched the papers, her nails digging into the edges. He can't take the house. It's ours. Jack's smile didn't waver. The house is in a trust, ma'am. The debt, though, that's yours. You're officially served. Have a great day. He turned, vanishing down the hall, his clipboard logging the timestamp with a click that echoed like a gavel. The apartment erupted. You didn't read the damn papers, Tyler shouted, tossing the stack onto the coffee table. Kate's eyes welled, but her voice was venom. You begged to be part of this. You said your credit was clean. Tyler paced, hands raking his hair. You tied me to your sinking ship and called it a power couple. You didn't even tell me you missed payments. Kate crossed her arms, defiant. You were supposed to help, Tyler. That was the deal. Help? He barked, laughing without humor. I didn't sign up to pay for your chakra candles and bad decisions. Kate flinched, her lower lip trembling, but Tyler wasn't done. You said David was a pushover. Look at this. He jabbed the divorce summons. He's not just leaving you, he's burying us. Outside, David's truck idled, rain blurring the world beyond. His phone buzzed. Jack's update. Delivered. They're losing it. David didn't smile, but his shoulders eased, a knot of tension unraveling. He pictured Kate's face, the moment her confidence crumbled, Tyler's bravado cracking under the weight of debt. They thought they'd outsmarted him, built a fantasy on lies and borrowed money. Now they were holding the bill and it had teeth. David drove home, Lucky's head lolling out the window, tongue flapping despite the drizzle. The city felt cleaner, as if the rain had washed away Kate's fingerprints. Back in Madison Park, he parked and let Lucky bound onto the lawn, chasing a squirrel with the joy only a dog could muster. David's phone pinged again, a bank alert. Kate had tried the MasterCard at a cafe. Declined. Then the Amazon card. Declined. He imagined her, stranded at a counter, her perfect facade fraying as the cashier shrugged. No scene, no tantrum, just the quiet humiliation of a life unraveling. He stepped inside, the house silent except for the drip of a faucet. The note on the island was gone. Kate had been here, seen it, maybe even laughed, thinking it was David's weak attempt at guilt. She didn't know it was a warning shot. David sat at the table, pulling up Sarah's latest email. Papers filed. Court date set. They've got no leverage. He closed the laptop, the click final like a door locking. Lucky patted in, dropping a soggy tennis ball at David's feet. Good boy, David said, tossing it gently. The dog's tail wagged, a reminder of what still mattered. Loyalty, peace, a home that was his alone. Kate and Tyler could scream, scheme, or beg. It wouldn't change a thing. They'd stretched their lies too far, and David had cut the rope. The storm was here, and he was the only one with shelter. The Seattle sunrise spilled gold across the horizon, painting David Clark's porch in hues of quiet victory. 3 months after Kate's betrayal tore his world apart, he stood with a coffee mug in hand, watching Lucky chase a butterfly through the dew-kissed grass. The storm of her lies had passed, and David had emerged not just whole, but free. The Madison Park house felt alive again, its hardwood floors creaking with the comfort of routine rather than the tension of deceit. The lavender candles Kate loved were gone, replaced by the clean scent of pine from an open window. David sipped his coffee, the bitterness gone, replaced by a warmth that matched the morning light. Lucky bounded back, dropping a soggy tennis ball at his feet, tail wagging like a metronome of joy. Good boy, David said, tossing the ball, his voice soft but steady. This was home now, his home, his peace, his dog. The past 3 months had been a blur of legal precision and personal reclamation. The divorce papers, served with surgical accuracy by Jack the process server, had landed like a thunderclap in Kate and Tyler's world. Kate's affair with her trainer, Tyler Reed, and their reckless $50,000 loan for Soul Bloom LLC had backfired spectacularly. David's attorney, Sarah Gwynn, had used their financial misconduct, listing his house as collateral without consent, and undeniable evidence of adultery to ensure Kate got nothing. No spousal support, no claim to the house, not even a share of Lucky's loyalty. Tyler, roped into the LLC by Kate's ambition, was equally trapped, his name tied to a debt spiraling with interest and missed payments. David hadn't gloated. He didn't need to. The court hearing a month ago was a formality. Sarah presented the evidence. Screenshots of Kate's texts, hotel receipts, the voice memo where she bragged to her friend Tara. If David finds out, he'll get over it. The judge, a no-nonsense woman with silver hair, barely blinked. Kate's attorney stammered through a weak defense, claiming emotional distress, but Sarah's counter, security footage of Kate and Tyler laughing in a hotel lobby, silenced them. "You're not the victim here, Ms. Evans," the judge said, her gavel falling like a full stop. Tyler sat slump-shouldered, his bravado gone, realizing he'd signed away his future for a fantasy. Now, David walked his usual route with Lucky, past the park where cherry blossoms clung to branches, their petals drifting like confetti. The air was crisp, Seattle's spring finally shaking off the rain. His phone stayed quiet. No more bank alerts of Kate's failed transactions. No desperate texts. She'd moved out the day after the papers were served, leaving behind a box of scuffed heels and half-used makeup on the porch. No note, no apology, just a silent surrender. David hadn't touched it. Let the rain ruin it. Let her see it, faded and forgotten, if she ever dared return. He stopped at a coffee shop on Main Street, tying Lucky's leash to a post outside. Through the window he saw them, Kate and Tyler, a tableau of ruin. Kate, in frayed sweats, her once perfect nails chipped, leaned across the table, her voice sharp but brittle. Tyler, eyes sunken, clutched a red-inked collections notice, his jaw tight. "I told you this would happen," he hissed, slamming the paper down. Kate's hands flailed, her reply a mix of defiance and panic. "You were supposed to fix it." David took a sip of his cappuccino, his expression neutral. Lucky sat at his feet, head tilted, ignoring Kate's silhouette as if she were a stranger. He didn't linger, didn't wave, didn't need to. They hadn't seen him, or maybe they had and chose to look away. Either way, their story was no longer his. David turned, Lucky trotting beside him, and continued down the street, the bookstore's familiar sign beckoning. He'd finish a novel today, maybe call his sister, who'd warned him about Kate years ago. "You were right," he'd say, and they'd laugh, the wound no longer raw. Kate had tried to reach him once, a week after the court date. A text, late at night. "Can we talk? I didn't mean for this." David stared at it, his thumb hovering. He could have answered, could have unleashed the hurt she'd caused. Instead, he typed 3 words, "Find your balance." Then he blocked her number, poured a whiskey, and toasted to the man he'd become. Not the husband who'd trusted her, but the one who'd saved himself. Tyler, too, had made a final play. A text from an unknown number, weeks ago. "She's not worth it, man. You win." David almost laughed. Tyler thought this was a game, a contest with Kate as the prize. He didn't realize he'd inherited her chaos, her debts, her tantrums, her endless need for validation. David replied, "She's your empire now." Then he deleted the thread, the words dissolving like rain on pavement. Back home, David sat on the porch, Lucky sprawled across his lap, a heavy warmth that grounded him. The box of Kate's things still sat by the steps, its cardboard softening in the damp air. He wouldn't move it, let it rot, a monument to her choices. Across town, Kate and Tyler were drowning in their own making. Bills piling up, their power couple dream reduced to arguments and collector calls. David didn't destroy them. He'd simply stepped aside and let their lies collapse under their own weight. The sun climbed higher, warming the porch. David closed his eyes, the sound of Lucky's steady breathing a lullaby of peace. He didn't win Kate back. He didn't need to. He'd won something better himself. And as the Seattle morning unfolded, bright and unburdened, David knew. This was the ending he'd earned, one paw, one step, one ruthless choice at a time.